This story made me actually chuckle. This is you know, chuckling at this is really kind of mean on my part, but why was this published? This is so fun. Like, this is rage bait, right? Like, this is intentional rage bait, right? Like, what are you doing? What is this? But let's have fun. Let's read this one. War shatters dating scene for women in Ukraine. While the pursuit of love might seem secondary to dealing with the horrors and privations of the war, many Ukrainians say they need romantic relationships to help them cope. A woman smoking a hookah last month at the Forsage nightclub in Kyiv, Ukraine. Many women in Ukraine say they have a difficult time meeting men now because of the war. For the past 2.5 years, Katerina Barakna, I don't know how to say this at all. I'm sorry, chat. Barakna has wanted to meet someone special, but war always gets in the way. She met a soldier, but then he was sent to the front. She traded text messages with another man. Jody right off the bat. But those fizzled out because he was in no mood to meet, fearing he might soon be drafted on the dating app Bumble. She liked the looks of a hipster, but when she scrolled through his photographs, she noticed his amputated leg. I looked at his profile for 15 minutes and felt so sorry for her. A marketing director for a clothing brand? Keep at it, Queen. You're doing God's work. You are keeping Ukraine's economy. You're working hard as a marketing director for a clothing brand. This is what I like to call, chat, the most bullshit job that ever bullshitted. The most worthless job that ever worthless. Fucking useless. Anyway, sorry. She wondered if she could handle a relationship with a maimed war veteran. Then she swiped left. Unmatched. Thank you for giving your leg for Ukraine. Unmatched. By the way, this is like, honestly, I'm glad they made it. Like, first of all, the level of stupidity and narcissism of this woman is legitimately crazy. Like, yeah, I want to be quoted in the New York Times about how I unmatched a maimed soldier because I couldn't handle his leg. Meanwhile, I'm a marketing director for a clothing brand. And like, are you fucking crazy? Like, the narcissism of this person is like, even if this is like, and what I'm trying to say is, even if this is true, this is something that you should never say out loud to anyone. You think it in your deepest, darkest part of your heart, and you're like, listen, I don't know that I can handle this. And you do it quietly. You know, I mean, broadcasting this is batshit. You have to be utterly delusional. I mean, first of all, this is an evil thing to do. I just want to lay this out there. Prejudging someone because of an amputation they suffered in a war to supposedly protect your own ass. That's fucking crazy. Russia's full-scale invasion has upended nearly every facet of daily life in Ukraine. 2/3 of Ukrainians have lost a relative or friend to the conflict. Hours-long blackouts are now routine across the country, and entire cities have been obliterated by Russian strikes. Oh, my life is so hard. I can't even date anyone with the war and all. Here, can you see me in my fuzzy slippers, reading a book and sipping tea? My balcony. What is going, like, the delusion of the, oh my god, like, she's been looking for someone for 2.5 years. You're 35. What do you mean you haven't been? I've been looking for someone for 2.5 years. You're 35. What? It has also wreaked havoc on the dating scene. While the pursuit of love might seem secondary to dealing with missile attacks, power outages, and food shortages, many Ukrainians say the need for romantic relationships to help them cope with the trauma of living in a nation at war. This is crazy. This is fucking crazy. This is fucking crazy. Like, I don't like to throw out mental illness terms, but this is like the most narcissistic, solipsistic, BPD ass shit I've ever heard in my entire fucking life. For women, the problem is particularly acute because the men have died. Tens of thousands of men have died. What? I guess when you're dead, you don't have to worry about dating anymore. This is the most incel bait article I've ever seen in my entire life. What is happening? Many more are on for women, the problem is acute because all the men have died. I think that might affect your dating life if you die in a war that you were drafted to. I'm just saying, maybe. Many more are on the front lines. Some have fled the country and others are reluctant to leave their homes, fearful of being stopped in the street by draft officers. Guys, I don't know. I think, you know, as I'm sitting here sipping tea on my balcony, reading in my fuzzy slippers, I think, you know, being press ganged and kidnapped off the street to go to the war and die is probably a little bit more of a problem for your dating life. I don't know. What is going on? In cities like Kyiv, the capital, the presence of men has noticeably dwindled. In some villages, conscription has hollowed out the male population. This leaves a small percentage of men who are ready for and want relationships, says Margarita Stelmashova, a Ukrainian psychotherapist and sexologist. Drafter. Every woman in this article should be drafted. That's my personal opinion, okay? Get some grugs in the chat. These are fake ass fucking jobs. Draft these people. Can you talk about this later? The communists in Vietnam sent a billionaire to 21 years in prison. Nice. I said it. I think that's all you need to say. Communists winning again. The war has made forming long-term relationships more challenging. Many soldiers experience psychological stress that strains their intimate connections, sexologists say. Women have it so tough. The women of Ukraine have it so tough. The men are so racked by PTSD from the horrors they witnessed that they can't fuck as good. What? And several women said in interviews that they're worried about dating servicemen who could have war trauma and who could one day be killed. Okay, like I legitimately, I want to say that the person that wrote this article is the most insane narcissist I've ever seen. Like, this is actually hurting to read. Like, because I'm not an insane incel, I'm not going down the incel like rabbit hole. You know what I mean? But I'm just in pain because you have to be the most out of touch, insane, batshit crazy narcissist to put these words in this order. What the fuck are you talking about? Faced with the turmoil of war, some women are now resorting to measures they had not contemplated before, like using dating apps or going on speed dates. Men are drowning trying to like flee Ukraine to avoid going into the meat grinder against the Russian military. And these women have to use dating apps. The horror! What? Last year, Ukraine had the lowest number of births and its second lowest number of marriages in the past 10 years, according to government data. War is a deal breaker, said Svetlana Krivochuku, 36, an IT worker. Fake job! Put her in the front! Who on a recent Sunday afternoon was participating for the first time in a speed dating event in a trendy cafe in central Kyiv. It's a love crisis. In the cafe, women sat at tables marked with numbered signs while men rotated for 5-minute talks. Each conversation began with people exchanging forms detailing their interests. Smiles crept across faces and laughter filled the room as bonds were forged. Oh my God, I can't believe women had to lower themselves to the speed dating event. Meanwhile, you know, men are coming back for the war maimed. Like, legitimately, this is insane. This is freak shit. We have an oiler in chat. Who's the oiler in chat? No one's oiling shit. What are you telling me? Oilers in chat. Shut the fuck up. Oh, I'm making fun of IT workers. IT workers know their bullshit job. They know 90% of IT tickets are, did you try turning the computer off and on again? Oh, it fixed it? Okay, cool. Shut up. You should be giving me even more subs. Because the only job faker than an IT worker is a Twitch streamer. All right, let's keep going. In the cafe, can you imagine can you imagine doing this? Like going, it's a dating crisis. These women keep dying. Oh, this woman was maimed. I don't think I'm ready for that. Like, what the fuck? Just Google the error and fix it. Yeah, it's like IT worker, aka person who Googles problems for you and just does the fix that is recommended on the Microsoft website. Fake job. Get out of here. Surely draft officers are catfishing men on these apps. I would definitely not use a dating app if I was a Ukrainian national hiding in my apartment. All these IT workers in chat and not a single one helps you in VO with your computer's fake friends. Incorrect. Actually, they did. But honestly, they didn't really do much. I mean, like, you know, we basically did what we figured out on our own. You know what I mean? They Googled with us. Like, you know, they just said, yeah, that seems like the Google thing I would try. You know, it wasn't like, you know what I mean? It's not like they actually knew what they were talking about. Actual Satan, thank you for the 28 months. And war rich people don't fight, it's always the poorest. Oh, I know. These are just fake job people, and it's very funny. Okay, let's keep going. At the table farther back, Alyssa Samusiva, 38, the organizer of the event, called Tet 8T, struck a somber note. Only 26 men had turned up, she said, compared with the usual minimum of 30. That had forced her to hold only one speed dating session instead of the usual two. They're afraid, said of the men, attributing their absence to a mobilization law the Ukrainian government had forced in May to fill out the ranks of the army. They don't want to go out. They just want to sit at home and hide. Miss Samusiva said she was considered organizing online sessions to circumvent the issue, like during COVID. This is the most narcissistic woman I've ever seen in my entire life. It's actually hurting. This is actually, like, listen, I'm not a lib, so I'm not a campist. If you don't know what a campist is, it's basically a person who claims to be a leftist, but supports their nation or their country or their alliance in a war. Okay? It comes from World War I, when there were two ways that leftists approached World War I. Real leftists were like, this is an insane war. None of this matters. It doesn't matter who wins. It's capitalists and imperialists on all sides. This is insane. We should stop the war. There's no difference between a Russian worker and an American worker. What are we doing? Why are we killing ourselves? This, why are we, or a German worker and a French worker, or an Italian worker and a worker of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire? Like, what is this? This is crazy. And then there were people like Vaush, the Vaushites of World War I, who were like, it would be good if we win. I'd rather my country be the empire than your country. Okay? That's so, and so it's relevant today because you'll see a lot of people calling themselves leftists and then going, yeah, NATO, yeah, we need to sanction China, yeah, sanction Venezuela, yeah, we need to do regime change, yeah. Those are campists, okay? This is very basic leftist shit. And that's why, like, for people like me, when we run across these pro-NATO leftists, we're always in shock. We're always like, huh? Because this is something you learn pretty much very early in your exploration of leftist thought, which is all workers are brothers. We're all the same. All nations are fake. Nationalism led to disaster, killing hundreds of millions of people. It's crazy talk to support Western imperialism. What the fuck are you talking about? So whenever we hear somebody who's like, I'm a socialist, I'm an anarcho-Bidenist, an anarcho-NATOist, we're like, what the fuck? So all is that to say, I don't want the Ukrainians to get invaded by Russia. It's very clearly an imperialist war. I also don't think the Ukrainians should be used as NATO's little fucking spy country where they put a bunch of listening devices and platforms in eastern Ukraine so they could try to contain and spy on Russia. I think that is escalatory and unnecessary. Russia doesn't really represent a threat to world order. Like, they were happy to trade with Europe. All they didn't want was fucking Ukraine to enter NATO, which would be the same as us saying, we don't want Mexico to enter into an alliance with China. Can you imagine if Mexico signed an alliance with China and put a bunch of Chinese listening posts in Tijuana, how we would feel? Do you understand how stupid this is? How crazy it is to do it to Russia? It's fucking stupid. That being said, these people are fucking evil. Okay, let's move on. On dating apps, men's profiles offer a window into the radical changes brought about by the conflict. More men are pictured wearing military uniforms or with prosthetic limbs. Foreigners employed by humanitarian organizations and international institutions appear quite regularly. So do foreign fighters who have joined Ukraine's war against Russia. These people are fucking gross. I'm sorry. Cringe Master, thank you. The strain of the war on Ukrainian men is evident on dating apps, observing that many look very depressed and tired. Whoever made this article really did not like this woman. They really didn't like her, with her fuzzy slippers relaxing on her balcony sipping tea. They really wanted her to be like attacked by every Ukrainian nationalist. Is this woman gonna have to go into hiding? She and other women said their moon was gloomy, with few willing to commit to relationships. You don't say! Olena Aktisenko, 24, a marketing producer. Fake fucking job. Wait, here's what I would do. If I was in a war, if we were in a war, I would pass the the Fake Jobs Liquidation Act. And I would draft every single person who has a marketing job into the military immediately. The Fake Job Liquidation Act of 2028, where everybody who's working in marketing would instantaneously lose their job and be drafted to the fucking infantry. The most frontline unit. Can you imagine how much instantaneously everything would be better if these people were drafted? Let's be honest. Said her exchanges on the dating app often hit a wall. I asked, what are we doing? What is happening? She said. They respond, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow in 2 years' time. There's a war in the country. Mrs. Akisenko said about 1 in 5 men she encountered on Tinder were soldiers, but she has not chatted with any of them. They're brave, they're heroes, she said. But given the situation, starting a relationship feels too risky. If I wasn't a complete and utter ascended feminist, is the best incel bait ever written. I want to see how many times this article is being linked on incel forums right now. This is the most pro-incel article ever written by a human being. Several Ukrainian women who have traveled abroad since the war broke out said it was much easier to date foreigners who did not face the threat of war. Mrs. Berakna, who often traveled outside Ukraine, I would censor this article. Like, I would censor this article because this article is literally just brain poison. This is one of the most evil articles ever written. Why do our men have to suffer so much when women could just go abroad and have a martini in Milan, she asked. Miss Pelchuka recalled how a military man she once dated had ended their relationship after he was injured. He said, you could find someone better than me in Kyiv, she recalled. It was very painful. You say no, I love you, and I'm with you for... Like, wait a minute here. What if I met someone and they were like, yeah, I got out of my last relationship. He was in the military. He got injured, so we had to break up because I'm trying to find someone better. What? Bitch, are you insane? You couldn't torture a statement like this out of me. This is the equivalent of, yeah, I had a really good relationship going on. And then she got cancer, and I don't want to deal with that anyway, so I'm single now. What? Holy Jesus Christ. The war has also heightened ideological divides, crushing potential relationships that might have blossomed before the conflict. Some women now refuse to date draft dodgers. Go to the fucking military then! What are you talking about? What? Bro. Jesus Christ. It's also common to see women on dating apps stating their refusal to date Russian speakers. Oh, it's common to see blatant racists. Wow. Reflecting a broader movement among Ukrainians since the war began to stop speaking Russian, a common language in the country, and switch entirely to Ukrainian, which is literally just Russian with an accent. Like, everybody knows this, right? Like, everyone knows this, right? Like, Ukrainian is just Russian with a slightly different accent and a few different slang words. It's the same language. Dialect is strong for it. The difference between German and Austria and German and fucking like what Germans have like very different dialects. German and like Berlin is more different than it is between Ukrainian and Russian. Seriously. Swiss German and Berlin German and Hochdeutsch is more different than Ukrainian and Russian. And this is, you know, again, how are you supposed to know that? You don't speak Russian. But like, come on. This is batshit crazy, dude. At the speed dating event in Kyiv, Yulia Kovtun stayed silent for 5 minutes after the man who had just sat down at her table told her he would speak only Russian. I'm looking for someone who shares my values and firmly supports the language issue, she said. Noting that both her grandparents had taken part in Ukraine's pro-independence nationalist movements in the 40s. You mean the Nazis? The Nazi collaborator fascists? The 40s, huh? Ruh-roh. Man, this article is like, it gets better and better. The atmosphere was more relaxed at the table of Serhiy Kuchikov, a soldier who lost his left leg in the war and now wears a sleek black prosthesis. He's fucking slanging dick. He's like, listen, the worst are, I'm not going back. I lost my leg. He's like, I got a pension. I'm chilling, you know? I'm slanging dick. I'm going to every speed dating event. Well, assuming he didn't lose his dick. Because whenever you have somebody lose a leg in war, there's a very high, if somebody is an amputee, there's a very high high likelihood of what we call, there was a study that I like to cite called injury profile suffered by targets of anti-personnel improvised explosive devices. The level of amputation, the level of soft tissue injury, the fracture pattern, including pelvic fractures, as well as perineal, gluteal, genital, and other injuries were recorded. So in other words, you know, when somebody loses their leg, they have a very high chance of, like, you know, having a severe perineal, gluteal, or genital injury, if you get my drift. He and the woman across from him said they were glad to have found a place to meet people, but briefly forget the harsh realities of war. Can you imagine unmatching someone because they have a prosthetic leg? How freaking, like, evil that is, especially in the middle of a war, and then have the New York Times publish you doing it and think you look good? Like, the level of narcissistic insanity is batshit crazy. Mr. Chukov said the event was a breath of fresh air compared with the situation in the army where he and his fellow soldiers struggled to form or cultivate romantic relationship. It's a great problem, he said, his voice trailing off. I don't need to come a second time because there's already so many nice girls today, he said with a grin. It's more than enough. No comments? Aw, man, come on. Let me have a comment section. Come on. Holy shit. That is the worst article I've ever seen in my life. Legitimately incel propaganda. All right, Ukraine has gotten their F-16s. I guess it's all going to change now. In case you didn't know, the Ukrainians are like getting pushed back and the lines are kind of faltering again. After furious battles, Ukraine loses a pair of hard-won villages. It was like a fight between two packs of dogs, said an officer describing the struggle for one of the areas. You're Hansi, but there was a moment when it made no more sense to keep people there. You know, when you lost the battle and you've been defeated and you're running for your life, that's when it no longer made sense.
After furious battles, Ukraine loses a pair of hard-won villages.
The loss of the villages was a blow for Ukraine, coming amid recent Russian gains along many parts of the 600-mile front line. Hey guys, how come Ukraine's story isn't being covered anymore? I mean, we spent $100 billion. We spent $100 billion on Ukraine, and yet they're losing. Oh my God, the cope is so ridiculous, man. Because Ukrainian Marine infantry had fought so hard to capture them during bloody counteroffensive. So in other words, these are the counteroffensive gains have been lost. Would you say he plays the role as a reactionary fighting against imperialism? I would say it's fascist on fascist violence, and it literally doesn't matter who wins. That's the honest to God truth about the Ukrainian war. And if you find that to be something that you don't like hearing, you're a campist, which is okay. It just means you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Whether the NATO wins or Russia wins doesn't matter for the advancement of humanity. Both are evil groups. What we should be seeking is peace, because these are people dying for no reason. From the men of the 58th Brigade, who had been defending Eurokanzi since October, and units of the National Guard attached to them, it was doubly hard. Up to 100 men were killed or went missing over 3 months of fighting in the village. And commanders were bracing for recriminations from the military high command, which demands its soldiers hold their positions to the last. Nazi shit. Nazi shit. This is Nazi shit. This is stuff Hitler would say. What the fuck are you doing? Soldiers and officers who had been inside the two villages said there were no civilians living there. The houses were so destroyed there was nothing left to defend. The battles took place in ruins from basements. There were a few trenches, but there were no defensive structures, and it was impossible to build them. So much was flying around, the wounded could only be evacuated at night, so there came a moment when it made no sense to keep people there. At the end, when the village was lightning fast and forced a rapid retreat from the village. Those of the 58th Brigade who survived the final retreat were in the hospital and not available for interviews, officers of the brigade said. Mark, the Ukrainian National Guard member, described 3 Russian troop carriers racing past his position at 6 a.m., inserting infantry that blocked their retreat. The main assault had begun. First channel reported that Russian Marines carried out the main assault using dune buggies for a speedy attack on the village. We cleared it so quickly, the guys did not even realize it. In an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, said a Russian soldier who gave his call sign Horse, told the reporter. Mark's unit were ordered to withdraw through the fields because the road was under Russian control. They began in an orderly fashion, but within hours, a desperate scramble under shell fire with wounded and dead left behind. What about the dating scene for women? What about the dating scene for women? It's hard to date. Oh my God. Legitimately. Oh my God. People are so fucking evil. It's like, it's crazy. My brain is hurting. This is nuts. Enemy drones were constantly hovering over the retreating groups. As a majestic enemy artillery, Mark wrote. An hour later, he was caught in an explosion and wounded at both legs. I could not go on, he wrote. There was another wounded man with me. He applied a tourniquet to his leg and saw groups of retreating soldiers passing by. A National Guard soldier used the call sign Rubroid, stopped to help. Led by Rubroid, Mark said he crawled through the undergrowth at a minefield to a designated collection point for the wounded. The second wounded man tried to follow but was too weak and told them to leave him. They left a man behind? The only thing I really feared was that I wouldn't be able to see my family again, Mark wrote. That was my main motivation, as I had to crawl across the hot earth and stubble of the Donetsk steppe under the scorching sun and did not give up. It took him 12 hours to reach a medical station. All, members of his company all got out alive, but other companies suffered dead and wounded, he wrote. The Russians raised their flag over the village that evening. The most difficult thing was to hold the village as Ukrainian drones began attacking them, the Russian soldier Horst said. They shot from everything they had, he said to the Ukrainians. The sky was black from their drones. They described the Russian assault troops as a determined and motivated force. This war is so fucking Jover, dude. This war is so fucking Jover. And they're gonna, oh my fucking, Joe Biden is such a bad president. He's so bad at this. He's so fucking bad at this. Members of the 58th Brigade spent a recent day hunkered down in mud trenches on the front line, listening for incoming shells and drones, and fending off explosive drones with handheld electric jammers. They have rigged up metal fencing and draped carpets over many openings to block the small but lethal exploding aircraft. The most dangerous time is when the units swap out after several days on the front line and frequently come under shell fire. But listen, where's your fuzzy... God, where's these guys' fuzzy slippers? Oh, I guess he has to improvise a shoe for his walk to the rendezvous point. I guess it's not a... Where's his fuzzy slippers and tea? You could be at a speed dating event. Can you imagine lowering yourself to a speed dating event? I shouldn't laugh, but what can you do but laugh? They're trying to attack our positions constantly, mostly in small groups on motorbikes, he said to the Russian troops. They get into the tree lines and dig in there. They spread like cockroaches. Yeah. Good beans. Thank you for the tier 2. Not at all of a fascist thing to say, but okay. Republicans holding up military aid to Ukraine for 6 months was a gift to Putin. He betrayed Ukrainians fighting for freedom and democracy. Every Republican who... So the cope is that we took too long to give them the hundreds of billions of dollars that they were getting the entire time. Why no Ukrainian artillery in the fight described? Because they are owned. Because the West doesn't have as many weapons as they do in the East. I'm sorry you don't know that. You've been propagandized into believing we're supreme, but we're not. And moving on. Russian grit and bloodlust in battle is unlike anything in the world. Okay, dude. Calm down. Ukraine has been given $500 billion and every available bullet, shell, and missile in the entire Western world, plus all of America's top-notch intel. This is true. Ukraine has been given literally everything, and they are still losing. Russia will grind their way all the way to Kyiv if they have to. Biden's legacy will be a ruined Ukraine, a terminally weakened and overstretched NATO, an enraged Russia. I don't know about this one. I think you're coping a little bit there. An enraged Russia and a massively empowered China. I mean, true. He makes George W. Bush look like a strategic genius by comparison, but because he is a Democrat, his legacy of failure will continue to get pass after pass from the liberals. I mean, kind of true. So I would say 50% not true, 50% weird, 50%... Let's wait a minute. Deep, slow breaths, relax to early bed tonight. Like, what? The New York Times is behind the times on the SMO in Ukraine. Russia is advancing all across the line of battle contact. They're doing it more and more rapidly. The U.S. and some European countries continue to support Ukraine in a conflict they cannot win will result in the complete destruction of Ukraine. Russia did everything possible to avoid this war, offering or engaging in negotiations several times, but the West betrayed them every time. Here's what I will say about these comments. It's not that I agree with them. It's the fact that these are the top comments because liberals are no longer paying attention. They stopped caring. As we told you, all you fucking people who were like, no one's even fighting with me in the comments because you all know it's true. This is crazy. Like if I had done this last year, if I had said the same things I'm saying now last year, people would have been losing their mind in the comments in my chat. They would be like, Mike, you're being a Putin. You're a fatnik. Russian patriots will win. Now no one even cares. This is the curse of being a leftist. You're right too early. And by the way, when you're right too early and then you're proven right, you know what people do? They go, they don't remember that you were right. They remember how you made them feel, which was angry. So they don't like you, even though you were right. Even though they were angry and wrong, they just remember that you made them angry. Meanwhile, Germany has announced plans to halve military aid to Ukraine. Yeah, they need to build up their own military. They've used all their stores. So they're critically undermining their own security to give it all to fucking Ukraine. They can't do that. Ukraine has been losing this war since day one, much more slowly than anyone expected, while inflicting awful losses on Russia, but losing nonetheless. We must not abandon Ukraine, but we must abandon the fantasy that with enough of the right type of weapons, they can win. As in restore their pre-invasion borders. Even if they could expel every Russian, they don't have enough soldiers to hold it and definitely defend that land. Westerners have been fed a steady diet of wartime propaganda, and I get it. Leaders don't want to tell the brutal truth right up front, but it's incumbent upon us to get real, drop the childish, okay, comrade nonsense, and come to terms with what can be achieved for Ukraine, rather than cling to fantasies that make even those possibilities too late. When the dust settles, reality will have the final word, as it always does, and it's likely that the two bloodied, exhausted armies will end up with a formalized, ugly peace. And that may hold if we're wise enough to allow it. I will tell you this. Russia is definitely taken a bloody nose. But the reason why Russia has taken such a serious bloody nose is because of the structural problems with Russian capitalist society in the first place. Okay, James, that's nice. The war in Ukraine is likely to end in the Russians keeping most of the land of a number of provinces in the east. They will also keep Crimea. They will not conquer all of Ukraine, and they will certainly not go further west. Why not? I mean, like, the longer this war goes on, right, the more and more likely it is that they take more and more of Ukraine. Because what will happen is eventually Ukrainians will get to the point where they cannot resist and they will start folding rapidly. We're already getting to that point. So like once the lines fully and truly crack and they run out of manpower, it'll be Jover. Russia does not have the military power to take and hold much more land in eastern Ukraine. What are you talking about? The Russians are not stupid enough to try to conquer western Ukraine. They realize that would result in the mother of all insurgencies. Would it? Would it? I mean, maybe, but I think that Russians have a little bit more insight into Ukraine than Americans did in, say, Afghanistan. The West needs to give Ukrainians everything they've asked for, not as soon as, but even if we did, they don't have the ability to use it. What you're really calling for is the U.S. to enter the war. That's what you're really asking for. You're saying, I was wrong about this war, and I'm embarrassed, so I would rather us go into World War III than admit it.